The Swoosh in the Mist, a gentle story of running shoes and quiet dreams. Part 1, Before Sunrise. A soft welcome. Hello and welcome. Settle in now wherever you are. Let the weight of the day slip away from your shoulders and notice how your body has already begun to soften into the surface beneath you. This is a story about running shoes, about quiet mornings, about ideas that grew slowly over many years. But there is no rush here, nothing you need to remember, nothing you need to do. The story will carry you gently, like a slow river, moving through shadowed trees. You can close your eyes whenever you like. The words will still be here, drifting softly through the air, and you can follow them or let them go. If sleep comes before the story ends, that is perfectly fine. That is, in fact, the whole idea. The story will continue on its own, somewhere in the quiet, while you rest. It's okay if you don't hear every word. Let your breath slow. Let your jaw loosen. Let your hands rest open, palms up or down, whichever feels most natural. The pillow holds your head. The blanket holds your warmth. And the story holds a small, quiet space for you to drift into. We are going to a running track in Oregon. It is early morning there, long before sunrise, and the world is soft and still. Come along now gently, and let the scene settle around you like mist. The track before dawn. Imagine a running track. It sits in a small valley in Oregon, surrounded by tall Douglas firs that have stood for 100 years or more. The sky above is not yet light. It holds that deep blue-gray color that comes in the hour before dawn, when the stars have begun to fade, but the sun has not yet thought about rising. The air is cool and clean, carrying the faint green scent of pine needles and the earthier smell of damp grass. The track itself is oval, as tracks are, with 8 lanes curving gently around an infield of grass. In this dim light, the lanes appear as soft gray ribbons, their red-brown surface muted, their white lines barely visible. A thin mist hovers just above the ground, making everything look softer, blurring the edges of things. The world feels hushed, wrapped in cotton waiting. You can let your thoughts blur and drift, just like that mist. Listen. The silence here is not empty. It is full of small, gentle sounds. There is the whisper of wind moving through the fir branches, a soft shushing that rises and falls like slow breathing. Somewhere far away a bird calls once, twice, then settles back into quiet. Water drips from leaves where the night's dew has gathered. And beneath it all there is a deeper silence, the kind that comes when the world is resting. The track surface has a particular feel to it, a slight springiness, a gentle give underfoot. If you were to walk across it now in the cool of this early hour, you would feel each step cushion slightly the surface, pushing back just enough to ease the impact. The rubber is cool to the touch, faintly damp with dew. It smells of minerals and rain, of something manufactured, but not unpleasant like a new car seat or a fresh eraser. The stillness. For now the track is empty. No runners, yet no coaches, no spectators. Just the oval and the mist and the slow lightening of the sky. The grass in the infield is wet, each blade holding a small droplet of water that catches what little light there is. If you were to lie down on that grass, and you can imagine this, if you like feeling the cool dampness seep through your clothes, you would see the sky stretching endlessly above you, gray and soft like the inside of a shell. The world is patient. It does not need to hurry. The sun will rise when it rises. The runners will come when they come. For now there is only this, the track, the trees, the mist, the quiet, and you drifting along on the edges of sleep. Notice how the bed holds you and how your breathing has begun to match the rhythm of these words. The temperature is cool but not cold, perhaps 50 degrees or a little less. The kind of temperature where your skin feels alive, where the air seems to wake up your face even as the rest of you wants to stay sleeping. If you were standing at the edge of the track, you might pull your jacket a little tighter, tuck your hands into your pockets, feel the slight chill on your cheeks and the tip of your nose. But you are not standing at the edge of the track. You are resting warm and comfortable while the story paints the scene around you. The cool air is there in your imagination, refreshing and clean, but your body stays warm beneath the blankets. This is one of the gifts of stories. You can be in two places at once, safe in your bed while wandering through a misty Oregon morning. The first footsteps. Now in the distance a sound, soft at first, almost beneath hearing, a gentle rhythm, steady and unhurried. Footsteps. Someone is coming down the path that leads to the track, their shoes making a muffled sound on the packed earth. The steps are slow measured, not the quick patter of someone in a hurry, but the deliberate pace of someone who has walked this path many times before. A figure emerges from the mist. A runner dressed in layers against the morning chill, a light jacket, shorts, running shoes that are worn but well cared for. The runner moves to the edge of the track and pauses there, stretching gently, arms reaching overhead, then down to touch their toes. The movements are slow and practiced, each stretch held for several breaths. You can let your own muscles soften now, releasing any tension you might be holding. The runner steps onto the track. There is that slight give underfoot, that gentle springiness that absorbs the impact of each step. They begin to move slowly, at first barely more than a walk. Their breath makes small clouds in the cool air, rising and disappearing into the mist. The sound of their footsteps is soft, regular, like a heartbeat made audible. Step, step, step. Breathe in, breathe out. The runner circles the track, finding their rhythm, letting their body warm gradually. They are not racing anyone, not chasing a time. They are simply moving, simply being present in their body, one foot in front of the other, lap after quiet lap. More figures appear. As the sky begins to lighten, just barely, just enough to notice, more figures drift in from the edges of the track. Another runner, then another. They arrive quietly, nodding to each other in silent greeting, each one taking their place on the oval. Some stretch on the grass. Others begin to jog immediately, their bodies already warm from the walkover. The sounds layer gently now, multiple footfalls slightly out of sync, creating a soft polyrhythm against the track surface. Breath, breath, breath. The rustle of jackets. The occasional quiet word exchanged as two runners pass each other. A murmured good morning, a brief comment about the weather. Nothing urgent, nothing loud. Let your breath follow theirs now, slow and steady, easy and calm. Among them is an older man, taller than the others, with a weathered face and watchful eyes. He does not run this morning. Instead, he stands at the edge of the track with a small notebook in his hands, observing. He watches how the runners move. He watches how their feet strike the ground. He watches with particular attention the shoes they wear. This man has been coming to this track for many years. He knows every lane, every curve, every spot where the surface is slightly worn. He knows the runners too, knows their strengths, their weaknesses, the particular way each one moves through space. And he is thinking, always thinking, about how to help them run better. The rhythm of laps. Around and around the runners go. Each lap is the same and each lap is different. The light changes gradually, the gray sky, taking on hints of pink and gold at the horizon. The mist begins to thin, lifting slowly from the grass, revealing more of the world beneath. The trees at the edge of the track become clearer, their dark branches reaching toward the brightening sky. The rhythm of running is hypnotic. Step, 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 step. Breathe in for 3 steps, breathe out for 3 steps. Or breathe in for 4, out for 4, whatever feels natural, whatever matches the pace. The body finds its own rhythm, settles into it, and the mind can drift while the legs keep moving. And with each slow footfall on the track, your own breath may begin to follow that same steady rhythm. The runners are not thinking about anything in particular, or perhaps they are thinking about everything, about their days ahead, about small worries and hopes, about nothing at all. Running has a way of emptying the mind, of letting thoughts rise and fall, like the breath coming and going without needing to be held. It is a kind of meditation in motion. Lap after lap. The number does not matter. Some runners are counting, perhaps, keeping track of their distance. Others have lost count entirely, and that is fine too. The track is always there, always the same length, always curving back to where it began. There is comfort in that certainty, in the oval's endless return. Watching and wondering. The tall man with the notebook is still watching. His eyes follow the runners as they pass, lingering on their feet, on their stride, on the way their weight transfers from heel to toe. He makes occasional notes, small marks and words that mean nothing to anyone but him. He has been doing this for years, watching and wondering, trying to understand what makes a runner fast, what holds a runner back. The shoes catch his attention most of all. Heavy leather, thick soles, stiff construction. These are the running shoes of the era, well made certainly, but not designed with the runner's needs truly in mind. They are adapted from other purposes, modified slightly for athletic use, but still fundamentally wrong in ways that are hard to articulate but easy to feel. You can let the details blur now, the story will hold them for you. He thinks about weight. Every extra ounce on a runner's foot must be lifted and carried forward with every single step. Over the course of a mile, that adds up. Over the course of a marathon, it becomes enormous. What if the shoes were lighter? What if every unnecessary bit of material were stripped away? He thinks about cushioning. The track is forgiving, but roads are not. Concrete and asphalt punish the feet, send shock waves up through the ankles and knees and hips. What if there were a better way to absorb that impact? What if the shoe itself could soften the blow? He thinks about grip. The surface matters: wet or dry track, or trail smooth or rough. A shoe that works perfectly in one condition may fail in another. What if there were a sole pattern that could handle all of it, that could adapt to whatever the runner encountered? Ideas taking shape. Bowerman was not a man who spoke more than necessary. He was quiet in the way that deep rivers are quiet. There was much moving beneath the surface, but you had to look carefully to see it. When he did speak, his words were considered chosen with the same precision he brought to everything else. His runners learned to listen closely because he rarely repeated himself. You can listen closely too, or you can let the words wash over you. Either way is fine. He had coached at the University of Oregon for many years, by then guiding young runners through the rhythms of training and competition. He knew their bodies almost as well as they knew when they were tired, when they were holding back, when they were ready to push harder. He could see it in the way they carried their shoulders, in the length of their stride, in the small hesitations that appeared when confidence wavered. But most of all, he watched their feet. He watched how their shoes met the track, the angle of impact, the way weight transferred from heel to toe. He watched the slight compression of the sole with each step, the flex of the upper, as the foot bent, the wear patterns that developed over weeks and months of training. These small details fascinated him in a way he could not quite explain. What the feet revealed. On those early mornings at the track, Bowerman would position himself at different points around the oval, watching from various angles. He would crouch low to see how the shoes struck the ground. He would stand at the curve to observe how runners leaned into the turn. He would wait at the finish line to study their final strides, when fatigue stripped away any pretense and the body moved in its most honest form. He noticed things that others missed. He noticed when a runner's heel hit too hard, sending a jolt up through the ankle and knee. He noticed when shoes were too stiff, forcing the foot to work against them rather than with them. He noticed when the weight of the shoe itself seemed to drag at the runner's legs, making each step just slightly more effortful than it needed to be. Let your own feet relax, now heavy and still beneath the blankets. The shoes of that era were built for durability, not for running. They were made of thick leather that did not breathe, with soles that were rigid and heavy. When they got wet, and in Oregon everything got wet, they became heavier, still sodden and clumsy. Bowerman would watch his runners slogging through rainy workouts, their feet lifting what felt like small anchors with every stride, and he would think there must be a better way. He saw where strain appeared in their bodies, the tightness in their calves after long runs, the ache in their knees that lingered into the next day, the blisters that formed where the stiff leather rubbed against skin. These were accepted as part of running, as inevitable costs of the sport. But Bowerman did not accept them. He wondered if the shoes themselves were causing half the problems. The workshop after dark. After the morning workouts ended and the runners went home, Bowerman would return to his own house, where a small workshop waited for him. It was attached to the main building, a modest space with a single window and a door that sometimes stuck in damp weather. This was where he did his thinking, his tinkering his patient work of trying to solve problems that no one else seemed to notice. The workshop was lit by a single lamp, its glow soft and warm against the evening shadows. The bulb hummed faintly, a sound so quiet you had to be very still to hear it. The light fell in a pool across the workbench, leaving the corners of the room in gentle darkness. It was the kind of light that invited focus, that drew the eyes to the work at hand and let everything else fade away. Imagine that soft glow now warm and steady as your own eyelids grow heavier. The workbench itself was worn smooth by years of use, its surface marked with small cuts and stains, and the circular ghosts of glue pots long since emptied. Tools hung on the wall behind it, each one in its place, scissors of various sizes, awls, needles, pliers, small hammers, with heads no bigger than a thumb. His fingers knew the textures of his materials intimately, the grit of a sole's surface before sanding rough like fine sand on a beach, the smoothness after almost silky to the touch, the fibrous quality of shoelace material, each strand visible if you looked closely enough, the slight tackiness of rubber cement as it began to set holding pieces in place until they could be pressed together firmly. He would work for hours, sometimes losing track of time in the absorption of the task. His wife, Barbara, would bring him coffee, would remind him gently that it was getting late, and he would nod and promise to come in soon, and then return to his work. Just one more adjustment, just one more test of how the pieces fit together. A simple wish. What Bowerman wanted was simple, though achieving it was not. He wanted his runners to feel lighter. He wanted them to move through their miles without the unnecessary burden of heavy, clumsy shoes. He wanted them to finish their workouts with less strain, less soreness, less of the accumulated damage that came from pounding the earth in footwear that fought against them. He wanted them to run the way children run freely, joyfully, without thinking about their feet. He had watched young children playing, noticed how they moved with a lightness that adults seemed to lose somewhere along the way. Some of that loss was inevitable, the natural consequence of growing larger and heavier. But some of it, he suspected, was the fault of the shoes. Your body can feel light too, sinking into softness, floating toward sleep. So he kept working. Night after night, shoe after shoe, experiment after experiment. Most of what he made did not work as well as he hoped. The soles would come apart during testing. The uppers would tear at the seams. The weight would be right, but the cushioning wrong. Or the cushioning would be right, but the fit would be off. Each failure taught him something, though the lessons were often frustrating. But he did not stop. He could not stop. The image of his runners laboring through their miles in shoes that made everything harder than it needed to be would not let him rest. There was a solution somewhere in the leather and rubber and canvas. He simply had to find it. One who wondered further. Among the runners who trained with Bowerman was a young man who thought about things beyond the track. He was not the fastest runner, not the most naturally gifted, but he was persistent, steady, the kind of person who showed up every morning and did the work regardless of how he felt. And while he ran his laps, his mind would wander to questions that had little to do with times or distances. He noticed the shoes too, though he noticed them differently than Bowerman did. Where Bowerman saw engineering problems to be solved, this young runner saw something else, an opportunity. He saw that runners everywhere were wearing inadequate shoes, and he wondered who would be the one to give them something better. He wondered how such shoes might be made and sold and distributed. He wondered about the business of running. You don't need to wonder about anything now. Just rest. These thoughts came to him in fragments during the long meditative laps around the track. They came mixed with the rhythm of his breathing, the sound of his footsteps, the particular ache of muscles working. He did not know yet what to do with these thoughts. He simply let them accumulate layer upon layer like sediment, settling slowly to the bottom of a still pond. Somewhere in those quiet mornings, running lap after lap on a track in Oregon, ideas about bigger possibilities were beginning to form. Not just better shoes, but a way to bring those better shoes to runners everywhere. Not just solving a problem, but building something that would last. But all of that was still far ahead, still hidden in the mist of the future. For now there was only the track, the coach in his workshop, the runner with his wandering thoughts. There was the patient work of making something better, one stitch at a time. And there is you settling deeper into stillness, letting the story carry you gently towards sleep. The lamp in the workshop glows on. The night air drifts through the window. The sounds of careful work continue soft and steady, like a lullaby sung in the language of making things. And somewhere nearby, a young runner is dreaming of roads not yet traveled, of ideas not yet born, of a future that waits quietly to unfold. Part 3. The Quiet Runner. A runner who read. His name was Phil Knight, though names, as we have said, are not the important thing. What matters is who he was, a young man who ran and who thought, who moved through the world quietly, noticing things that others did not notice. He had come to the University of Oregon from Portland, just 100 miles north, and he had joined the track team not because he expected to become a champion, but because running was something he knew how to do. Knight was not the fastest runner on the team. He would never stand on an Olympic podium or see his name in record books. But he was steady, reliable, the kind of runner who showed up every morning, regardless of weather or mood. He ran his laps with a quiet persistence, finding comfort in the repetition, in the predictable rhythm of feet against track. That same rhythm can carry you now, steady and slow, toward rest. He was reserved in a way that some mistook for coldness. He did not speak much in groups, preferring to listen, to watch, to form his thoughts carefully before offering them. When he did speak, his words were measured, chosen with precision. This was not shyness exactly, but something more deliberate, a habit of holding back until he was certain of what he wanted to say. Running suited his temperament. It was a solitary activity, even when done with others. You could be surrounded by teammates on the track and still be entirely alone with your thoughts, your breath, the private conversation between your body and the ground beneath you. Knight found peace in this solitude, a space where his mind could wander freely while his legs did their familiar work. Mornings on the oval. The mornings at Hayward Field had their own rhythm, their own texture. Night would arrive in the dim light before dawn, when the air was cool and damp against his face. He could smell the wet grass of the infield, the faint mineral scent of the track surface, the green freshness of the fir trees that ringed the field. These smells became part of his morning, as familiar as the sound of his own breathing. He would stretch slowly, feeling the stiffness of sleep leave his muscles, and then begin to run. The track was soft beneath his feet, giving slightly with each step, cushioning the impact. His shoes made a quiet sound against the surface, not quite a slap, not quite a whisper, something in between. The rhythm of that sound was hypnotic. Step, 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 step. Breath in, breath out. Let your own breath follow that rhythm now, easy and unhurried. The cool air filled his lungs and left again, warmed by his body. His arms swung loosely at his sides. His eyes focused on some middle distance, not on anything in particular, just a soft point in space that moved with him as he circled the track. Lap after lap, the world narrowed to these simple sensations: the feel of his feet, the flow of his breath, the quiet working of his heart. And while his body moved, his mind would drift. He thought about his classes, about assignments due, and books half read. He thought about his family back in Portland, about letters he should write. He thought sometimes about the future, that vast uncertain space that waited beyond graduation, beyond the track, beyond everything he knew. Evenings with books. After the morning runs and the day's classes, Knight would often find himself in the library, surrounded by the particular quiet of that place. The library had its own atmosphere, the soft rustle of pages turning the occasional muffled cough, the low hum of the heating system working against the Oregon chill. The air smelled of paper and binding glue, of dust and old wood, and the faint sweetness of aging books. He would settle into a chair at one of the long wooden tables, the surface smooth and cool beneath his hands. A lamp cast a warm circle of light onto his books and papers, creating a small island of brightness in the larger dimness of the room. The warmth of the lamp was gentle on his face, a soft contrast to the cool air that lingered near the windows. Imagine that warm light now soft and golden as your own eyes grow heavier. The texture of the pages was something he noticed, though he could not have said why it mattered. The smooth grain of the paper, the slight roughness at the edges where it had been cut, the weight of a book in his hands, substantial but not heavy, the small resistance when he turned a page, the soft sound it made settling into place. These were small pleasures, unimportant in themselves, but they accumulated into a feeling of comfort, of rightness. His pencil moved across notebook paper, making notes, drawing connections, capturing thoughts before they could slip away. The graphite left a soft gray trail, words and numbers forming slowly in his careful handwriting. Sometimes he would pause, pencil held loosely, staring at nothing while an idea took shape in his mind. Then he would write again, the quiet scratch of pencil on paper, the only sound in his corner of the library. Pages turning like slow waves, thoughts drifting, nothing urgent, nothing pressing. A small idea, It was during these quiet hours of study that Knight began to think more seriously about shoes. He had read somewhere about companies in Japan that were making athletic shoes of remarkable quality, lighter than American shoes, more carefully designed, sold at prices that undercut the established brands. The idea lodged in his mind and would not leave. He thought about the shoes he wore when he ran the same heavy leather models that everyone wore. He thought about what Bowerman was doing in his workshop, trying to make something better. And he wondered, what if there were already better shoes being made somewhere else in the world? What if the solution was not to invent something new, but to find what already existed and bring it here? This was not a grand vision, not a plan to build an empire. It was simply a thought, a possibility that seemed worth exploring. Japanese companies were making good cameras, now competing with the established German brands. Why not shoes? Why not running shoes specifically designed by people who understood what runners needed? You can let these thoughts pass by, like clouds, noticing them, but not holding on. Knight wrote a paper about this idea for one of his classes. The paper was modest, practical, full of numbers and projections. It did not claim to predict the future or to have discovered something revolutionary. It simply laid out a possibility that someone might import high-quality running shoes from Japan and sell them to American runners who wanted something better than what was currently available. The paper received a good grade. His professor found it interesting, well-researched, plausible. And then it went into a folder with other papers, and Knight moved on to other assignments, other concerns. But the idea did not disappear. It stayed with him, quiet and patient, waiting for its moment. Quiet words about shoes. Sometimes, after a morning workout, Knight would linger near the track while the other runners drifted away. Bowerman would be there too, making his notes, watching the last stragglers finish their laps. And the two of them would talk in the unhurried way of people who share an interest but do not need to rush toward conclusions. The conversations were calm, respectful, low in energy. Bowerman would mention something he had noticed about a particular shoe, a problem he was trying to solve. Knight would listen, ask a question or two, offer a thought. They spoke about weight and cushioning, about the way different materials behaved over time. They spoke about what runners needed and what the current shoes failed to provide. Their voices were soft, like the voices in a dream, easy to hear, easy to let go. The Japanese are doing interesting things, Knight said once, almost offhandedly. I've been reading about their manufacturing. They're getting very good at making athletic equipment. Bowerman nodded slowly, considering this. Good materials don't help if the design is wrong, he said. But if they can make things lighter and cheaper, that could be worth watching. The conversation did not go further than that. There was no plan made, no commitment offered. Just two people sharing a thought, planting a seed that might or might not grow. The morning sun was warming the track. now burning off the last of the mist, and there was training to do, work to attend to. They parted with a nod, each returning to their separate rhythms, days passing gently. The days passed, as days do each one, much like the last. Mornings on the track, afternoons, in class evenings in the library with its warm lamps and quiet air. Night ran his laps and wrote his papers and thought his thoughts. Bowerman watched and tinkered and experimented in his workshop. Neither of them knew yet what would come of all this thinking and doing. There is something restful about this kind of time when things are forming but have not yet formed. The pressure of decision has not arrived. The weight of consequence has not settled. There is only the present moment, with its small tasks and quiet pleasures, its routines and rhythms that carry you along like a gentle current. You are in that kind of time, now drifting, nothing decided, nothing required. Knight would graduate eventually, would move on to other schools and other studies. The track at Hayward Field would still be there, still hosting its early morning runners, still circling endlessly back to where it began. Bowerman would still be watching, still tinkering, still searching for the perfect shoe that probably did not exist, but was worth pursuing anyway. And the idea about Japanese shoes would still be there too, tucked away in Knight's mind, growing slowly in the dark like a bulb waiting for spring. He did not know yet what he would do with it. He only knew that it would not leave him alone. A journey beginning to form. In time, Knight would travel. He would cross the Pacific Ocean to a country he had only read about, carrying his small idea with him like a seed in his pocket. He would visit factories and meet with businessmen, speaking carefully in rooms that smelled of tea and paper. He wanted something that would hold the track on a wet Oregon morning and release cleanly with each stride. These were simple wants, easy to state, difficult to achieve. But Bowerman was patient. He had been patient for years. He could be patient a while longer. Breakfast and inspiration. One morning, Bowerman sat at his kitchen table while his wife Barbara made breakfast. The room was warm with the smell of coffee brewing, that rich brown scent that fills a kitchen and makes the whole house feel awake. Sunlight came through the window at a low angle, casting long, soft shadows across the table, touching the edges of cups and plates with gold. Barbara was making waffles. The waffle iron sat on the counter, its indicator light glowing a soft red, its surface warming to the temperature needed to cook the batter. When she poured the batter in and closed the lid, there was a gentle sizzle, the quiet sound of something transforming from liquid to solid, from possibility to breakfast. Listen to that gentle sizzle in your mind, soft and warm, asking nothing. Bowerman watched without really watching, his mind elsewhere, still turning over the problem of souls. The waffle iron opened, releasing a small cloud of steam that carried the sweet smell of cooked batter. Barbara lifted out the waffle and set it on a plate, and Bowerman found himself staring at it, not because he was hungry, though he was, but because something about its surface had caught his attention. The grid pattern. The small squares raised and uniform covering the entire surface of the waffle. Each square was identical to its neighbors, arranged in neat rows and columns, creating a texture that was both regular and complex. The pattern held the syrup, kept it from running off, gave the waffle its distinctive feel in the mouth. And Bowerman thought, what if a soul looked like that? A pattern for grip. The idea was simple, as good ideas often are. A sole covered in small raised squares or nubs or studs would grip the ground at many points instead of just a few. Each little protrusion would make contact independently, finding purchase on whatever surface it met. The pattern would be flexible, able to conform to uneven terrain. And because the nubs were small, the sole would still be light. Bowerman did not jump up from the table or shout with excitement. That was not his way. He simply finished his breakfast, thanked Barbara for the waffles, and went to his workshop. The idea accompanied him quiet and patient, waiting to be tested. Ideas can wait like that, patient and unhurried, until the time is right. In the workshop, he began to experiment. He took the waffle iron from the kitchen. Barbara would later note its absence with a mixture of exasperation and affection, and he tried pouring rubber into it, using it as a mold. The first attempts were failures. The rubber stuck to the iron or did not fill the squares properly or came out misshapen and unusable. But Bowerman was not discouraged by failures. He had experienced many of them over the years, and he knew that each one contained information, a lesson about what did not work that brought him closer to understanding what might. He adjusted the temperature. He tried different types of rubber. He experimented with release agents to keep the rubber from sticking. Warmth and texture. The workshop grew warmer as he worked the heat from the waffle iron radiating into the small space. The smell of rubber intensified that distinctive scent of polymers warming, becoming pliable, ready to take whatever shape they were given. It mixed with the lingering hint of morning coffee that clung to his clothes, creating an atmosphere that was part kitchen, part laboratory. He would pour the rubber carefully, watching it flow into the grid pattern of the iron. Then he would close the lid and wait, feeling the warmth emanating from the device, listening to the soft sounds of the rubber settling and curing. The waiting was its own kind of work, patient, attentive, full of quiet hope. You can feel that warmth now, soft and gentle, helping your body relax. When he opened the iron and peeled out the rubber, he would examine what he had made. The early prototypes were rough, imperfect, but they showed promise. The grid pattern transferred well, creating rows of small nubs that stood up from the surface like tiny mountains. He would run his fingers over them, feeling their texture, testing their firmness, imagining how they might feel against a track. The texture was unlike anything he had made before. It was uniform, but not flat, complex, but not chaotic. Each nub was a small point of contact, a tiny anchor that would grip the ground. Together they formed a surface that seemed to promise exactly what he had been seeking. Grip without weight traction, without bulk. Morning trials. Bowerman attached his experimental soles to shoes and gave them to his runners to test. This was the ritual he had followed for years. Make something, try it. Learn from what happened. The track at Hayward Field became his testing ground, the early morning workouts, his laboratory sessions. The runners would lace up the experimental shoes and head out onto the oval, their feet carrying Bowerman's hopes and questions. He would watch from the sidelines, notebook in hand, observing how they moved, how the shoes performed, whether the new sole made any difference. The air was cool and damp as it always was, and the sound of feet on track filled the morning quiet. That quiet can settle into you now, soft and deep like mist over the field. The feedback came slowly in fragments. They grip well on the curves, a runner might say, but the nubs feel strange at first. Or, I like how light they are, but they wore down faster than I expected. Each piece of feedback was a data point, a clue about what was working and what needed adjustment. Bowerman would listen, nod, make notes. Then he would return to his workshop and try again. Adjust the height of the nubs. Change the spacing between them. Try a different rubber compound that might be more durable. The cycle repeated, each iteration bringing small improvements, small refinements. Try, adjust, soften. Try again. Try, adjust, soften. Try again. This was the rhythm of Bowerman's work, as steady and reliable as the rhythm of running itself. There was no eureka moment, no sudden breakthrough that solved everything at once. There was only the patient accumulation of small improvements, each one building on the last, each one bringing the soul a little closer to what he imagined it could be. Try, adjust, soften, try again. The waffle iron grew seasoned with use, its surface darkened by countless experiments. The workshop accumulated prototypes, souls in various stages of development, each one a step on the path toward something better. The smell of rubber became as familiar as the smell of coffee, a constant companion in the quiet work. Let that rhythm carry you now. Try, adjust, soften, try again. Let it be a lullaby. Boxes arrived at the small warehouse, cardboard containers that had traveled from factories far away, crossing oceans and continents to reach this modest space in Oregon. And boxes left addressed to stores and runners carrying shoes that would soon find their way onto feet that needed them. Arriving, leaving, arriving, leaving. The rhythm was like breathing, like the tide, like the steady pulse of something alive. Each box that arrived was full of possibility. Each box that left was a small fulfillment. A promise kept a pair of shoes on its way to someone who had asked for them. Let that rhythm settle into you now, arriving and leaving steady and slow. The warehouse had its own atmosphere, its own particular feeling. The ceiling was high, and sounds echoed softly, the scrape of a box being moved, the murmur of voices, the distant rumble of a truck arriving or departing. The air was cool and slightly dusty, carrying the dry scent of cardboard and the fainter smell of rubber from the shoes inside. Workers moved through the space with unhurried purpose, pulling boxes from shelves, checking orders against lists, packing and sealing and labeling. Their movements were practiced efficient, the kind of ease that comes from doing the same tasks many times. There was no rush, no urgency, just the steady work of moving shoes from here to there, the ritual of trying on. Somewhere in a store or a living room or beside a track, a runner was opening one of those boxes. The cardboard flaps parted to reveal tissue paper, and beneath the tissue paper, the shoes. The runner lifted them out, feeling their weight, or rather their lightness, turning them over to examine the sole, the stitching, the swoosh on the side. Then came the trying on, the loosening of laces, the sliding of foot into shoe, the careful adjusting until everything felt right. The laces made their soft sounds as they were threaded and tightened, a whisper of fabric against fabric, a small ritual of preparation. You can let these details blur if you like. The story holds them for you. Pull cross, pull cross. The laces found their tension snug but not too tight. The runner stood, shifted weight from foot to foot, took a few experimental steps. The shoes felt different from what they were used to, lighter perhaps, or more cushioned, or simply new in that way that new things always feel. This scene repeated itself countless times in countless places. Each time was slightly different. A different runner, a different room, a different pair of shoes, but the essence was the same. The opening of the box, the trying on, the moment of decision, yes, these feel right. Or no, not quite, let me try another size. Morning after morning. And then the shoes were worn. On morning runs through quiet neighborhoods where the only sounds were birdsong and the soft rhythm of footfalls on pavement. On evening jogs as the light faded and the air grew cool. On tracks and trails, on roads and paths, wherever runners went to do the thing they loved. The laces were tied and retied, loosened and tightened, adjusted to the particular preferences of each runner. Some liked them snug across the top of the foot. Others preferred a looser feel around the ankle. The shoes accommodated these preferences, becoming shaped by the feet that wore them, molding gradually to the unique contours of each runner's stride. Your own body has its own shape, its own comfort. Let it settle where it is. Races were run in those shoes. Small races, mostly local events, with modest prizes, weekend competitions, where the reward was the running itself rather than any trophy. The swoosh appeared at starting lines and finish lines, one mark among many not yet dominant but present accumulating. A runner would cross a finish line, breathing hard, legs tired, and look down at their feet. The shoes had done their job. The swoosh was scuffed, now marked by the miles, no longer pristine but proven, and somewhere in that runner's mind a small loyalty was forming, a sense that these shoes could be trusted, that this brand understood what runners needed. Growing gradually, the number of stores that carried the shoes grew slowly but steadily. A sporting goods shop in Portland, then one in Seattle, then others in California and beyond. Each new store was a small victory, a new place where runners could find the shoes without having to order them through the mail. The orders grew, too, not dramatically, not in sudden leaps, but in the gradual way that real growth usually happens. Last month's orders were a little larger than the month before. This season's shipments were a little bigger than last season's. The numbers in the ledgers crept upward, line by line, page by page. Numbers can blur into softness now. The counting can wait until morning. The company hired more people a few at a time as the work required. New voices joined the small office. New hands helped with the packing and shipping. New minds contributed ideas about what the shoes could become. The space that had once felt adequate began to feel crowded, and eventually they moved to somewhere larger, though still modest by any grand standard. None of this felt like conquest or domination. It felt like tending a garden, like nurturing something that was growing at its own pace. You could not force a plant to grow faster than it wanted to. You could only provide the conditions it needed and trust that in time it would flourish. Echoes in the quiet. In the warehouse at the end of the day, the activity would slow and then stop. The workers would finish their tasks, gather their things, say goodnight to each other in the easy way of people who share work. The lights would be dimmed, leaving only the soft glow of security lamps, and the space would settle into stillness. The boxes remained stacked on their shelves, waiting for tomorrow. The cardboard held its shape in the darkness, patient and still. If you stood very quietly in that space, you might hear the building itself, the creak of metal expanding or contracting, the hum of a distant refrigeration unit, the soft settling of things finding their rest. Let yourself settle like that now, finding your own rest, your own stillness. The smell of cardboard lingered in the air, that dry, fibrous scent that was neither pleasant nor unpleasant, just present. Mixed with it was the fainter smell of rubber and canvas, the signature of the shoes that filled so many of those boxes. These smells had become familiar to everyone who worked there, as unremarkable as the air itself. Tomorrow the rhythm would begin again. Boxes arriving, boxes leaving, orders filled, shipments sent. The slow, steady work of bringing shoes to runners who wanted them. But for now, in the quiet of evening, everything was still. Wider and wider. The spreading continued wider and wider, like circles expanding on water. The swoosh appeared in new cities, new states, new regions. It appeared on the feet of runners who had never heard of the company a year ago, who had discovered the shoes through a friend's recommendation or a store display or a glimpse at a race. Each new wearer was a small ambassador, carrying the mark into spaces it had never been before. They did not think of themselves that way. They were just runners wearing shoes that felt good, but the effect was the same. The swoosh traveled with them, becoming visible in more places, becoming familiar to more eyes. Circles expanding soft and slow, requiring nothing from you but rest. The growth was not dramatic enough to make headlines or attract much attention. It was the kind of growth that happens quietly beneath notice, the accumulation of small gains that only becomes visible when you step back and look at the whole. One year's sales were larger than the previous year's. One season's reach was wider than the season before. And through it all, the work continued. Bowerman, in his workshop, still tinkering, still improving. Knight and his team, in the office, still filling orders, still building relationships with stores, the runners on their tracks and trails, still lacing up, still running, still carrying the swoosh into the world one step at a time. Evening at the track. Let us return now to where we began, a running track in Oregon, though the hour is different. It is evening now, the light fading from the sky, the air growing cool as the sun settles toward the horizon. The same fir trees stand at the edge of the field, their branches dark against the dimming sky. The same oval waits patient and unchanged. But something is different. On the track, a handful of runners are finishing their evening workout, their movements slow, now cooling down after the effort of training. And on their feet, on more of their feet than before, the swoosh is visible. That simple curved line appearing again and again, a quiet repetition around the oval. The evening settles around you, too soft and gentle, inviting rest. The atmosphere is the same as it always was. Peaceful, unhurried, filled with the particular satisfaction that comes after physical effort. The runners stretch on the grass, their muscles warm and loose, their breathing gradually slowing. They talk quietly among themselves or sit in companionable silence watching the light change. The air smells of grass and earth and the faint mineral scent of the track's surface. A bird calls from somewhere in the trees, a single note repeated, answered by silence. The temperature is dropping, and some runners have pulled on light jackets, their movements slow and easy. The swoosh rests on the sides of shoes that rest on tired feet. It has traveled far since Carolyn Davidson drew it at her desk, across oceans, across continents, to tracks and trails and roads, in more places than anyone had imagined. But here, in this moment, it is simply part of the scene, a mark on a shoe, a shape in the fading light. The light fades, and you can fade with it, softly, gently into rest. The runners gather their things and begin to leave one by one, heading home to dinners and families and the quiet hours before sleep. The track empties, returning to the stillness it holds when no one is there. The swoosh disappears, with the runners carried away into the evening, waiting for tomorrow's miles. And the track remains, as it has remained through all of this story. The same oval, the same lanes, the same patient surface, waiting for feet to run upon it. The stars are beginning to appear now, faint points of light in the darkening sky. The world is quiet. The day is done. Rest now as the track rests, as the evening rests, as all things rest when the work is done. Part 8, Rest Now. What we have seen. We have traveled together through a quiet story. We began at a track in Oregon in the mist of early morning, watching runners circle the oval, while a patient man took notes. We met Bowerman in his workshop, surrounded by shoes and tools, working by lamplight to make something lighter, something better. We met Phil, the quiet runner, who became a quiet businessman, driving his car to track meets with boxes in the trunk. We watched as orders were filled, and shipments sent as the small company grew one pair of shoes at a time. These memories can soften now, blurring at the edges, asking nothing of you. We saw the waffle iron become a mold, its grid pattern pressed into rubber to create a sole that gripped and cushioned. We saw a name chosen, Nike, a short word from old stories, and a symbol drawn a single curved line meant to capture motion. We watched as the swoosh spread quietly across tracks and trails, appearing on more feet in more places, carried by runners who simply wanted good shoes to run in. And we returned to the track at evening, where the same peaceful atmosphere held unchanged by all that had grown from those early mornings. The story is complete now. You do not need to hold any of it. Letting go. You can let go of the track now. You can let go of the shoes and the boxes, the workshop and the warehouse, the names and the numbers. They have served their purpose, carrying you here to this place of rest. They can drift away now like mist lifting from a field, like clouds moving across a night sky. What remains is simply this: your body resting where it is, your breath moving in and out without effort, the quiet around you holding you gently. Breathe in slowly. Breathe out slowly. There is nothing else to do. A gentle noticing. Notice your feet. They have carried you through the day, and now they can rest. Let them be heavy, warm, still. Let any tension there simply dissolve, melting away like snow in sunlight. Notice your legs, the muscles that have worked, the joints that have moved. They can soften now. Your calves, your knees, your thighs. Let them sink into the surface beneath you, releasing, settling. Notice your hips. Let them be heavy. Let the weight of your lower body be fully supported, fully held. There is nothing to do, nothing to adjust. Just rest. Breathe in, breathe out. Soft and slow. Notice your stomach. Let it be soft, unclenched. Let each breath move it gently, a slow rise and fall like waves on a quiet shore. There is no need to hold anything there. Notice your chest. Feel your heart beating steady and calm, the same rhythm it has kept all your life. Let your chest expand with each inhale, release with each exhale. Easy, effortless. Notice your shoulders. They carry so much during the day. Let them drop now, falling away from your ears, releasing whatever they have been holding. Let them be heavy, low at ease. You are doing perfectly. Simply resting is enough. Notice your arms and your hands. Let them lie where they are soft and still. Your fingers can uncurl. Your palms can open or close, whatever feels natural. Let any tension drain away, flowing out through your fingertips. Notice your neck. The muscles there can soften, letting your head rest fully on the pillow. There is nothing to hold up, nothing to support. Just stillness. Notice your jaw. Let it loosen, let your teeth part slightly. Let your tongue rest soft in your mouth. So much tension lives in the jaw without our knowing. Let it go now. Notice your eyes. Behind closed lids, they can be still, soft, unfocused. There is nothing to look at, nothing to see, just darkness, gentle and complete. Your whole body is at rest now, heavy and warm and still. The track at night. Imagine the track one last time. It is night now, fully dark. The lanes are barely visible, soft gray lines against darker ground. The fir trees are black shapes against a sky full of stars. The air is cool and still carrying the faint scent of pine and damp earth. No one is running, no one is watching. The track rests as tracks do when no one is there. The white lines glow faintly in the starlight. The grass of the infield is dark and silent. You can let go of the track now. It will be there tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. In the distance, perhaps one soft light glows. A window in a building at the edge of campus, or a street lamp far away. It does not matter what it is. It is simply a point of warmth in the darkness, a reminder that the world goes on quietly even as you rest. The stars turn slowly overhead as they have always turned, as they will continue to turn. The track holds its shape in the darkness. The shoes are put away. The runners are sleeping. The story is done. Simply rest. You can let go of the track, the shoes, the names, and simply rest. You can let go of everything the story has shown you. It was here to carry you this far, to bring you to this place of stillness. It has done its work. You do not need to remember any of it. There is only this breath, and then this one, and then the next. Sleep now. Sleep well. Sleep deeply. Sleep long. The night holds you. The silence holds you. Rest. Good night.